All right, we're going to go over the highlights of the first race of 2022. So I'm excited. I jump out the front a little bit. Probably shouldn't, but today was all about the wind and just shaking out the legs, getting ready, getting back into racing. Now, if you look in the upper right-hand side here, there's a flag. The wind is crazy. I mean, it was 20 plus mile per hour sustained wind this whole time. So that means gutter this section, right? If you're to the far left, this isn't true guttering. When you're true guttering, like right about now, there's not enough space for anyone to get anywhere in your draft. And then going down this section, you got a bit of a cross headwind, and a lot of people were going to the left. Eventually, you'll see later why that's important to stick to the right so that people don't get in your draft. And then you get into the third corner here, wide open roads, and you get a basic downhill, and everyone was just flying because the wind was so strong to the back. So that's the course. Now, I was putting a good amount of effort, you can see here, into this corner, into the place where you're going to want to be in the draft the most. So there's a couple instances of this where I really put down some power just to get up into a draft right here, and then I'm in a draft when the wind is the strongest. And then if I catch myself on the front during the cross headwind here, I just make sure you gutter it all the way to the right because the wind is coming from the upper left-hand side here, and that means everyone behind you is not getting any of your draft. And then basically, you're just making them suffer as much as you are. Now, people were being nice and sticking to the left-hand side, so I'd eventually sit back over into their draft. Now you can see here there's a couple of attacks that fly, and my job today was basically just sit and let that get brought back and make sure if it didn't get too far away, then it was okay. Now again, if there was any sort of gaps into some sections, especially going into the headwind, I want to close this down so you can see here, I want to be on those wheels and I don't want to be stuck and let this become a brake that gets too far away. So I put in some effort, and you can see my rear cam, all of those guys behind me, they're putting in some effort in the wind, and that's how that worked out. Now you can see if we're on the left-hand side, everyone's getting the draft. So I do scream out here and there to say, hey, let's make sure we stick to the right and make everyone suffer, and that was kind of the plan. Now this guy, he wanted to pull off, and I decided I was going to punish him for that because we're getting into the headwind. So I drop a gear, make a small attack, look back, make sure I'm not bringing anyone with, and then make sure I'm into the draft going into the headwind section here. The problem here is usually if you're getting some free speed, I would just fly by these guys, but since this is the wind and the whole point was to catch up to somebody and sit in their draft, I do throw some brakes here. Usually if there wasn't such a strong wind, I would just say, okay, whatever, just continue through and maybe catch up to the guy ahead. So you can see there's a guy off the front, but they were just suffering, just really suffering by themselves in the wind. So if I'm in the wind, I'm going to go ahead like I'm doing right here, stay to the right-hand side, let no one take the draft. Now here, this is the first break that actually goes somewhere. So I get a little boxed in here, unfortunately, and they're going, so I don't really have anywhere to go. I want to go on the right-hand side so that I can slingshot up in the draft with other people. And so I go ahead and do that. I see that guy go, so I'll go to the right, take a draft, and then catch back up. Now that draft was pretty important. Now these guys up there, they're going to continue for quite a bit. We're on lap 7, as you can see in the upper left. We get to lap 10, they're still out there. So that break was going pretty good. So now I catch myself on the front again, and so I'm going to go gutter it to the right-hand side, and you can see I get aero. I'm putting down a decent amount of power, sustained power here. Just a good well, not really threshold, but just a decent amount of effort to make everyone else suffer, maybe string it out just a little bit, and then bring this break back as much as I can. Now, we don't quite catch them all the way, but we get pretty darn close. It's just those last couple seconds where they're dangling out there, so they're not completely uncatchable. Then we get to the second to last lap here, and there's a crash. This one got a little brutal. Overlapping wheels, again, protected front wheel. Guy hit his head pretty hard, and then Kevin does a little bunny hop, just unfortunately doesn't get quite far enough, and I think he separated his shoulder. Wasn't the best situation. But that leaves me on the front here with, 2 laps to go, and I'm about to be on the front. So I'm like, fuck it, I'm going to go ahead and drop him, hit a good attack here on the right-hand side, look back, make sure no one's on my wheel. Continue with that power, just so I know that I'm away, look back again, making sure again and no one's sitting on my wheel. Get a little aero, and now I can bring this back as much as I can, and it's just a sustained effort down this section to make sure I can claw this back as much as I can without going too far into the red, because after this we're going to have one more lap to go. So you can see here, eventually get to the tailwind section, and that pushes me a little bit further, and I catch up to the group. Then we get to this section. It was a little chaotic. People were screaming because we all wanted to make sure we're on the right-hand side.
Keep going, boys. Go to the right.
So kind of remind everyone, like, we're still racing. We all kind of get back together after kind of going through the crash scene, which there wasn't really too many people. But no one was attacking. I had my head on the shoulder, my head on a swivel, basically, looking back, and no one was attacking. So I wanted to be first in this last corner. So I drop a couple gears. I throw a watt bomb, go to the right-hand side so that I'm not giving anyone my draft. I look to the left. There's a guy. He's about a bike length ahead of me, so I'm going to sit in his draft. Now, he's spinning out, and we're slowing down. He actually, after the race, told me that his Di2 broke or died. So I was kind of confused why we were slowing down and we were just spinning out. But I'm going to go ahead and try to dive on the inside of him. He could have shut the door and killed us all. I would have probably done that. But, yep, and then a personal best sprint here. So I'm on the Adapt cycling team this year under Chad Hartley. I imagine there's going to be a good number of these wins to see in the next 3 years. So continue watching. Thanks.